Whether you're new to chess or you've been playing the game for a long time, at some point you've probably wondered, what is a Grandmaster and what are all these other titles about? And that's the point of this video. I'm going to take you through the process of achieving the international titles, show you some cool images from tournaments, and talk about some cool statistics like some of the youngest Grandmasters in the world. At the end, I will show you the game that clinched the International Master title for me back in 2018. As always, you can use the video timestamps to jump around and see what you want to see. Let's get into it. So first things first, FIDE. Fédération Internationale des Échecs. That is the international governing body of chess. And essentially, it is a ranking system which has a rating that quantifies your skill level, okay? Every country has its own rating system, but to achieve these titles, you have to go by FIDE's rules. And these, at the bottom left, are the titles. Now, this is just the rating requirement for the titles, right? Beginning at 2,000 all the way up to 2,500, depending if you're trying to become a Grandmaster, an International Master. GM and IM also require something called a norm, which we'll talk about later. Actually, they require 3 norms. And as you can see, before you ask the question about, women's titles and the open titles, I'm just here to report the facts as they are as of November 2020. My view on kind of this gender gap in chess is the fact that, 98% of my viewing audience is male. And I would love to see a lot more women competing at the elite levels, and for something like the women's title to potentially be a level playing field. Just an open title for everybody. But it causes a lot of debate, very heated debate for some reason. But, we'll see as the future develops and as we get more kind of understanding of the issue, what happens. But a good place to start for everybody would be right here. This is the Wikipedia page for the FIDE titles. It has a little bit about the history, and the Grandmaster title can be achieved with some weird assortment of tournaments, as well as the International Master title, but we're going to talk about kind of the traditional way of doing it by getting your norms and your rating. These stats blow me away over here on the right-hand side. The fact that there's only 3,700 IMs internationally and 1,600 as of January 2020 active playing Grandmasters. That is wild to me because I would hypothesize that something like, 50 million people play the game of chess. Maybe 100 million people, maybe not ranked, but just, play the game of chess in some capacity, right? Like that doesn't seem too insane. And that's a ridiculous statistic when it comes to these international titles. Now, like I said, IM and GM have a separate kind of thing, not just the rating. Now, what I'm going to show you right now is a little bit ugly. Okay, this is straight from the FIDE handbook. And to break this down for you, it's a 9-round event. So to get a norm, one of 3 norms, you need to fulfill a tournament with a certain performance of at least a certain amount of rounds. Now, this is a very ugly table. The real thing to pay attention to here is how many points you need to score out of 9 rounds. Okay, out of 9 rounds, depending on your rating range of opponents, the average rating range of the people that you play. So if you play an average rating in this category, you would need 6.5 points to get an International Master norm. If you played somebody in this category, right, of average rating, you would need 6.5, and so on. And the worst part about this thing is that there's something called a federation requirement as well. So for example, you need to play X amount of players not from the country where the tournament is being organized. So you need foreigners, basically people who are registered under another federation. Now there's a few ways of doing this to get these kinds of norms at these tournaments, okay? There's 2 types of tournaments. Open tournaments, which look something like this. For example, the Gibraltar Chess Festival. Okay, in the international tournament, hundreds of people around the world come to play. And the thing about an open tournament is that you don't know who you're going to play every round. You just play based on who's ever in your score group. It's a massive tournament. So what happens is at the end of a round, they'll tally all of the points up. They'll put a bracket, and then you just automatically get chosen against one of those players. So you have no real control. You have to consistently do well. And if you lose a game, next round you'll play someone lower rated, and that will mess up your average. And the other thing that you can do is you can play something called a closed tournament. a 10-player group of players. They get every correct federation ahead of time, and you know the exact amount of points you have to score. You also know what color you will play against which opponent first, and that way you can prepare a little bit better. There's pros and cons of both. Open tournaments are all over the world. You can travel the world, go to beautiful places. Oftentimes, if you're not from the same federation and you're titled already, they will give you like a hotel room for free or free entry, like anywhere basically. The benefit of that's the benefit of an open tournament. But obviously that's a detriment in terms of you don't actually know who you're going to play at what moment. You have no control of the pairings. It sounds good to play in a closed tournament, but in a closed tournament, there's actually a separate problem. They're usually really expensive. So some norm tournaments in the United States will charge you an entry fee of like $1,000. Plus you have to pay the hotel. Plus you have to pay the flight and everything like that. So one of these closed tournaments in the United States, if you're chasing a GM norm, can easily cost you $1,500. It's a 5-6 day tournament, and you play 2 games every single day. So yeah, I mean, you can see how the costs can start piling up very, very fast. These tournaments are like really no joke. And as you get those 3 norms and the rating, because as I showed you earlier, you need the rating, you would apply, and then you get the title. I made 5 IM norms in my life, IM norm performances. I've never made a GM norm. I get asked this a lot. I've never scored well enough for a GM norm, and my highest ever live rating was 2430, as you saw from the table earlier. You need to be 2500. So I'm not that close, and my current rating is, oh God, we're not even going to talk about my current rating. I told you guys that I would show you a little bit of statistics, right? So the crazy thing about chess is that the youngest grandmasters of all time have been 12, 13, 14. It's terrifying. I mean, right now, there's kids who are like 10 and 11 trying to break these records. The worst part about it is COVID, because people haven't been playing chess at all this year. There have been prodigies around the world, like at 10, 11 years old, who wanted to become GMs, and they just haven't had a chance in 2020, which is absolutely heartbreaking, but that's unfortunately the reality of the situation. That's basically all I have, in terms of the titles. Now you know, to get CM and FM, you just have to get the rating. To get IM and GM, you need to get the norm requirements. And as I promised you, the last thing that I would share is my game. A game that I played in 2018. I had the rating already. I was on pace to get my final IM norm. It was the 8th round of the New York International, and I was playing New York resident who had come here recently from Uzbekistan, Jurabek Hamrakulov. Very, very strong player. And I had the white pieces against him. I believe at this point he was still an IM, maybe GM, like 2490. I prepared for a long time, and, well, d4, knight f6, c4, e6, and he played c5. Now, c5 is kind of inviting a Benoni. White generally pushes here. Black will go something like this. Played g6, bishop g7. This is called the Benoni defense. It's interesting, it's complicated, and it can lead to all sorts of fighting chess. Now, my opponent in the game played the move b5, though. He did not play ed5, he played b5. This is known as the Blumenfeld Gambit, and it is a really crazy system. I knew that he was going to play it, so I tried to do a little preparation, but then he surprised me anyway. The point is this. If you take on e6 first, Black will take back, and you take the pawn on b5. But what this does is, it gives Black a big center with the move d5. And Black basically says, all right, man, you've got these doubled pawns. I'm not really sure what they're doing. I'm going to develop in the center, push, and try to smash you early. But Jurabek played bishop to e7, which was a super strange move. And I didn't really know what to do after this. I mean, I could have maybe developed my bishop here, but I just felt like fighting, and I decided to sacrifice a pawn with the move e4. Now, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have done this. He took it, and then I kind of just said, look, he's not castled. Let me get out early. I'm going to castle quickly, get my queen out. But he took, and then he didn't even castle. He just played a6, and this is such a tricky move. So if I take, I'm just helping him develop. He can even give me a check and then take back. But even if he just plays like taking with a knight and tries to go to b4, it's not a very pleasant position for me. So in the game, I just castled, and when he took, I took. He played knight c6, and I didn't know where to put this bishop. So my logic was that if I put my bishop out to e3, he's going to play rook b8 and win my pawn. And I didn't really like that. I mean, I can bring it back to e2, but then I didn't like that his bishop lines up on this diagonal. So the reason after knight c6 I played this move is that I wanted my bishop on c3. I wanted it on the long diagonal. And playing b3 here to put the bishop on the long diagonal wouldn't have worked, because he would have played bishop to f6, and that would have been a problem for me. So I played bishop d2, and I sacrificed the b2 pawn. Now already this is like the weirdest game ever, because I literally have a passed pawn. He has a central clump. Like literally, look, I have no c, d, or e pawn. He's got some weird pawn clump in the center, so I hit his queen, queen a3. I can't take on g7 because he's pinning me here, so I play queen d2, trying to get over here. And if he castles, well, let's not forget that this pawn is just hanging on the other side of the board, and suddenly he's in some serious trouble. So he plays bishop f6. I traded, and now he's got a fork pawn clump in the center. The king is still in the center. I played rook d1, threatening to take. He played rook a7, defending. I said, well, I gotta go for it. Queen h6, hit this, try to get in here, giving this away, but it doesn't really matter. And he played rook f8 and gave me the h7 pawn. Tell me this is not the weirdest structure of pawns you have ever seen. c5, d7, something like this, and he plays c4. Just saying, all right, man, I'm going to go get my queen. Maybe I'll play d5, hit your queen like this. So I played queen h5 check, making him block, and I centralized my rook. I felt like I should fight down the two files here. My opponent here played rook a5, hitting my queen from the opposite side of the board. Now, at this point, it's move 23. We're both getting very low on time, which is kind of common at these events. It was a very complicated position, so we probably have 2-3 minutes with a bonus time per move. So I played queen g6, and he played all the way back with his queen to defend himself. And here I found an idea which, during the time of the game, I thought I was a genius. It wasn't such a great move, but the move knight to d2. In the middle of all of this chaos, I play a backwards knight move because I want to move forward in the position. And he goes knight e5, countering me, hitting my queen, defending his pawn, maybe knight d3. I played all the way back to b1 to try to go down to b8. Some exemplary board vision here shown by Gotham. He goes rook g7, giving his king a little bit of breathing room. I played rook e3 because in the future, I might want to sneak around this way. And I want to, meet his rook there. But here, what I had missed is that after knight to e4 instead, trying to go to knight d6, defended by my rook, if he plays d5, and I don't have this anymore, I have check, king f7, and in this position I can go check, king g6, and here I thought my attack was done. Because if I play rook up to e3, I mean, he can just, for example, take my pawn, and even if I check him, like, king is just going to hide. I mean, at best I can get a draw, but I thought maybe I could get something more. What I had missed is that after rook takes a2, I have a fork, which is completely ridiculous, just calculating that in the game. And even with winning his rook, he's going to get my knight, so it's still kind of complicated. But that's what the engine showed. Rook to e3 is what I played. I thought it was more practical. He played rook d5, and I played knight e4. I invited this trade because I'm trying to get my knight in. He plays d5, and I played check. Knight comes back to f7, and my knight goes to g3. Still an extremely weird position because I'm threatening knight f5, for example, and he can't take because of this fork, that would be. So he goes rook g5. Oh, sorry, he plays king d7. Sorry. If he had played rook g5 in this position, then I would have had to route my queen back and come around this way, is what I wanted to say with rook g5. It's a completely insane position, but king d7, and that's what I did. I mean, I did this anyway. I played queen d1, queen a4, trying to meet the king on the other side of the board because I have no other way to hit the king. He goes queen b4, covering that, and I say, okay, let's hit these two. Knight h5, hitting him on both sides of the board. Rook g5, giving this away. Because had he played rook g6 in this position, I have the move knight f4. And this is why anticipating your opponent's threat is so important. Yes, you can temporarily stop one threat. But then comes, sorry, I played the other move. Then comes the other threat, and this is really bad. Because now everything is going to fall. This is going to fall. I'm going to break down the king's safety. And this is just, this is simply losing here. I mean, knight e6, I even have rook e6, rook f6, for example. But in the game, He sacked the pawn, played king e7, and here, for example, if I had played knight takes d5, it looks like it works. Rook d5, queen d5. Oh, I'm so smart. He can't take my queen. Well, I'm not wrong. He can't. But he can back rank checkmate me. So I did not hang that, and in this game, I left my knight alone, and I played the move h4. Counter-attacking him, not giving him this. Counter-attacking, and now my king has some breathing room. He plays rook e5, and now I don't have a choice, really. Because if I move my rook to defend my knight, I miss that he has rook e1 check. In the game, I didn't miss that. I traded, and now things kind of calmed down a bit. c3, I pinned the pawn to the queen. King d6, and I just pushed my own pawn. He went queen b2, trying to push his pawn through. I stopped his pawn. He took, and I played queen d4, hitting his pawn, and at the same time threatening this, a million different checks. He played queen b1. I played king h2. He pushed, and we had a very funny repetition of moves here to close the game. Queen f4 check. He has to go here. If he plays king e7, I have check. And I'm picking up the pawn, actually. Now, still, he might be okay, but no need to lose your extra pawn. He plays knight e5, and I sneak around, and he has a few king moves. One is better than the other. If he had played king to c6, for example, now I have a very nice move. Knight takes pawn. And he cannot take back because of queen c8. This is kind of what I was hoping, that he might blunder in a low time situation, but he didn't. He just went back, and at this point, it's just a draw. There's really nothing I can do unless, you know, I want to let him promote, which I don't. So, queen g7, king d6 defending the knight, queen f8, and so on. If he goes something like king c8, for example, I can still go here because the knight is hanging. And we agreed to a draw. And I know maybe you thought, oh, he was going to win the game and clinch it. No, but it was a completely insane game. I had to hold my nerves throughout that entire game. And the draw actually sealed me the result. The final round of the tournament, my result actually technically didn't matter. That game ended in a draw as well. But 2018 in June, I clinched my final IM norm. And a few months later, I became an international master. I have a video on the best game I ever played. That was the game I hit my peak. That game came a month after this game. So 2018 was a pretty good year of chess for me. Hope this helps. All right. And if you've made it this far in the video and you're not yet subscribed to the channel, do me a favor and do that. I think like 65% of my viewers right now aren't subscribed. It would be pretty cool as we try to chase 200,000, which is a crazy number. And let me know if there's any other concepts of videos that there really aren't on YouTube that you want me to cover. I saw that there wasn't a lot of videos on this subject, and so I decided to cover it, and I hope it helped. I'll see you in the next one.